Okay, first of all, I want to introduce to you Dr. Nancy Smith. She is the principal consultant with DataSmith Solutions in Austin, Texas, and she has a great deal of experience in providing technical assistance to numerous states and organizations on issues around data governance and improving the development and use of statewide longitudinal data systems. Dr. Smith was the director of the statewide longitudinal data system grant program at the U.S. Department of Education, and she's a co-founder and deputy director of the data quality campaign, so she has a lot of experience and background around longitudinal data systems. She's authored a number of white papers on research capacity, adjusted cohort graduation rates, federal data collections, and the impact of statewide longitudinal data systems. She began her career in data governance while she was a system analyst at the Texas Education Agency, and she earned her Ph.D. from the University of Texas at Austin. I guess I better not say hook 'em horns, right? So we welcome Dr. Smith, and I'm going to turn the webinar over to her now. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. And thanks all of you for participating. We're up to 120 folks now online. That's a fabulous turnout for this. And I apologize in advance if my voice crackles, but we'll just keep going, slogging along. And just a reminder, we are going to do a Q&A and discussion session after the presenters. And if things pop up for you, thoughts, questions, please type them into the chat pod at the bottom of the screen. We are monitoring those, and we'll select some of those questions to discuss. So onward and upward. So you have an SLDS. You know, I know a lot of you, especially those of you involved in the state education agencies, know that we've spent years building and designing and talking about and starting to collect the data and connect longitudinal data. But now what? It's not enough to build a system and collect the data. If it was, we didn't need to go to student-level data systems. We were already collecting tons of data before that. The real purpose of this is to figure out the various and often many ways that we can use this longitudinal data to help inform policymakers and practitioners, ultimately to improve student outcomes. But what do we mean by data use, data sharing, and how can we support all of that? What type of staff and resources does it take? What skill sets does it take to support robust data use, data sharing agreements? Excellent. As I've worked through the years with various states in various capacities, I hear a lot of the same questions and conversations going on. Go back. Yeah, there we go. We're trying to coordinate the slides here. Anyway, so I hear many of the same questions and conversations going on, and I've identified 5 kind of overarching questions that I want us to think about during today's discussion. These address a lot of the issues that I hear as I work with different states. The first one, what data uses need to be supported? And I would say that's both internally to SEAs and LEAs and externally with researchers, with other policy advocacy organizations. What are valid uses of the data in the SLDSs? And I will say the SLDS, we know that mostly holds administrative data. We all know that there are a lot of other data sources that state departments of education manage and operate and store the data about. So really the bigger picture for me in SLDS is the whole system of data collections. So what are valid uses? Because just because you have the data doesn't mean it's appropriate to use it in any old way. Next, what are the best processes for managing data requests from outside researchers and organizations? As you all know, you're living it, there are limited staff and resources available to you. So any processes that are developed need to be very, very efficient. You need to figure out which staff to do what and how to be the most efficient. But you really do need to come up with really good, sound, standardized processes. Otherwise, it can be haphazard in who responds to what question or what data request. You don't know if you're having, if you're using the same data source for the similar questions, all of that. We just need to come up with good processes for managing data requests and data sharing. Third one, how do you guide data use, research, and analytics to improve education outcomes? Along these lines, some of the discussions have been, what are the priority analyses for SEAs and LEAs to consider? What types of information do policymakers need? How do you set your priority research agenda if you have one? How do you figure out which data requests to respond to with your limited resource? The fourth question, how do you prioritize competing data policies and needs? Because there are many more questions and desires and needs and requests than you really probably have the staff or the time to answer. So how do you prioritize what gets attention, what gets responded to? Some of the requesters, you're always going to have the governor and the legislature, other state policy makers with information requests. You've got federal and state mandated reporting, which are no small activities. You've got priority research, information needs, hopefully statewide reports that may or may not be mandated, but you do historically. Just a lot of, and now that we've advertised the SLDSs, we've got a lot of other folks requesting the data. So internally to the SEAs, how do you manage all those requests? How do you decide what to respond to? And then externally, how do you communicate so that external research organizations can help monitor themselves and what they ask for and what timeline they're looking at? And then finally, I don't know the answer to this one, but I'll just pose the question, how do you sustain funding and other support for the system? How do we get state line item budgets to support this, or can we? What program areas, funding can support this? What do you charge for your data sharing, the data sets that you share? How are there license fees? I don't know, but I do want to pose that because I know it's something all of you are having to deal with, and if the goal of this webinar, especially during the discussion session, is for us all to help each other think through and learn from each other on some of these issues. Just want to go to highlight a couple of resources. A few years ago, back in 2010-ish, the Department of Ed, U.S. Department of Ed, and the Forum developed a series called Traveling Through Time series, all about SLDSs. And I think there's 4 books involved, and I think they're really pretty timeless, especially the third volume, which I've got here, that covers data governance, improving data quality, and certainly very important, how to secure data and protect the individual. Those have a lot of very good information in that that I don't think will ever go away. I think we're always going to have to stay on top of how can we improve our processes to improve data quality. How do we keep our data governance up to date? And privacy and security and confidentiality will always be there. So I think that's a great resource, as well as the 4th book, Advanced SLDS Usage. This has a lot of good information, including 4 case studies on how to use data, how different states in the district have used data. And I think I hope that these serve as good thought-provoking case studies as you